Hey everyone, it's Conrad Bobilak here, CEO of Investors Prime Real Estate and the best-selling international author of Australian Real Estate Investing Made Simple. Welcome to today's video. I often hear the term game changer in the industry, and really 99% of the time, nothing changes. I wonder if you experienced that in your industry. There's a lot of game changing all the time. This is a game changer. And then there's disappointment. Well, I can tell you now, what I'm about to cover in this video is going to be a game changer in the real estate market. And I'm going to show you the data on very similar schemes that were introduced in the last 2 decades that have had a massive immediate impact on the real estate market. So let's talk about the new 5% deposit, no LMI, no means tested, first home buyers deposit scheme that the Labor government has just introduced, and how it's going to put a rocket up the real estate investing and ownership market in Australia. Sit back, relax, grab a coffee or a V drink, and let's get through this video. Now, before we get started, I just want to do a bit of a disclaimer that everything that I'm teaching you today is purely educational purposes only. I'm not here to give you any recommendations. Before you do anything, seek independent financial advice and make sure the person that you're dealing with has exactly achieved the results that you want. They're not just an academic. If you haven't heard me speak before, my name is Conrad Bobilak. I'm a property investor in Melbourne. I'm also a real estate agent, an ex-mortgage broker, ex-private banking for NAB and Medfin. But the most important thing, guys, is that I'm a property investor. I'm a real person investing and sourcing for other investors. And this is my passion and my healthy obsession, as I like to call it. So I'm keeping it real. I'm not an academic. I'm not someone that is just writing things and theorizing. I'm actually in the market every day. In fact, tomorrow I'm meeting a valuer at 9:30 in front of one of my properties from WBP, doing a valuation on one of my investment properties. Later on that day, I'm meeting with 2 financial planning companies, one in Port Melbourne, one in Albert Park. And so I'm dealing with these kind of issues all the time and these topics about how to structure your property portfolio correctly, what's going to happen in the future, all these kind of wonderful things. And I'm going to share with you today where I think the market's heading, what the impact will be of the 5% deposit scheme, and also which sectors of the market will be affected the most. Because ultimately, this channel is designed to do one thing: help you guys make money and help you guys make the right informed decisions about the property market in Melbourne. Because there is a lot of estates in Melbourne, a lot of areas that severely underperform. And if you put money into these areas or type of properties, you're going to be in a lot of pain. You're going to be very disappointed. And chances are you're never going to achieve your objectives in building large property portfolios. Before we get into the topic, I just want to once again thank you guys for buying my book, Australian Real Estate Investing Made Simple, and my finance book. I've got #1 bestseller multiple times, even though the book now is 10 years old. This one's 5 years old, but the other one's 10. It's still got #1 bestseller multiple times. So I really want to thank you guys for supporting me and buying my book on Amazon and various bookshops. Probably Amazon's being the biggest now bookshop in the world. So it's a very humbling experience when you write something, and it took me 5 years to write that book. And I have written every word myself. I didn't have a ghostwriter or any kind of third party. I wrote that book, every page, every letter. So I know what it takes, and I just want to thank you guys for supporting me. And it's got #1 seller, #1 to sell in various categories, including investments, buying and selling, real estate, mortgages, etc., etc. If you want to get a copy, by the way, from me directly and get some freebies, jump onto realestateMadeSimple.com.au. And for the finance book, which teaches you how to reduce your mortgage in record time, jump onto bookonfinance.com.au. Now, let's get into it. What is a first home buyers scheme or guarantee scheme? And there's been various versions of this that have been actually introduced by the Labor government mainly in the last few decades. And the irony is, and I'm a Liberal supporter fundamentally. I've always been a Liberal voter even since I was, uni. But every property boom that has occurred in Australia has always been with a Labor government in place, which is ironic, right? Because their intention is not to make the market boom. Their intention, supposedly, is to make the market affordable, right? So the average Australian can get into the property market. But because Labor is so incompetent, and they're a bunch of career academics and career politicians, they always, whatever they introduce backfires. And so Really, I think I'm going to actually become a Labor voter because I've made more money during Labor governments in my portfolio than during the Liberal governments. So I'm thinking of switching. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too old, or maybe I've been drinking too much vodka as a Polish person. But I'm thinking of switching because every time a Labor government's in, my portfolio goes through the roof, and I make hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes in the millions. So this is going to happen again. I mean, it's happening again in October, which is great. It's going to have a completely unintended impact on the property market pretty much immediately. And I'll talk about why and how in a second. But this is really because, so I love it. First of all, I love the strategy. Okay. I'm a big fan. I think it's going to do, number one, it's going to put people and first home buyers in the driver's seat and get into the property market. Number two, which is the more important thing, is going to push up all the properties in Melbourne up to $950,000. That's going to put so much pressure on those properties, they're going to go through the roof. And because they go through the roof, the next level of properties get dragged up as well. Because as they say, a rising tide lifts all the boats. So it's going to be an amazing 6 months coming up. Now, how do I know this? Because I'm pretty old now. I'm nearly 50, and I have seen this happen time and time again. So if you look back at the property market since 1960 in Australia, you look at there's obviously number one, it goes up and down. There's economic turmoil. There's a reactive high, emotional low. People overreact. People have a herd mentality. They need social proof before they act. And this is why investors only represent a very small section of the market, because investors respond, they don't react. Most people are reactive. They're out of control. They just get blown around like a paper bag in the wind. They're not in control at all. They're just purely emotional. So I always say, when the taxi driver is telling you how much money he's made out of property, that's a good time to know that we're entering the peak of the market, which is good because that's when you revalue your properties. You can see that negative gearing was quarantined in June 1985, and then it was reintroduced in 1987. When negative gearing was stopped, because they felt that it was too good for investors, and people were taking advantage of the system, which they weren't, by the way. What happened was all the rentals were sold up. So let's say you've got 100 properties that are owned by investors that are negatively geared. Well, the market is pretty much driven by owner occupiers. So 70% of properties are owner occupied, I should say. And so if you sell 100 properties owned by investors, inevitably they will end up with 70% of them, which is 70 properties out of 100, being owner occupied, and the other 30 will be bought by other investors. Because remember, investors only represent a small section of the market. And when that happened is the rental market shrunk, because out of 100 rental properties before negative gearing, when negative gearing was introduced, when it was scrapped, those 100 rental properties shrunk to only 30 rental properties. And there's a lot of people in society that rent by choice or necessity, and they can't buy a property. They don't qualify for mortgages. They could be in a major capital city on a contract. They could be young people that don't know where they're going to be located later on. They don't want to commit to a mortgage. They could be just out of uni in a first job. So there's a lot of reason why people rent. And ultimately what happens is with negative gearing, this is pretty much a career ender for anyone that tries to roll it back. It pushes up the rental market astronomically high. And so I want negative gearing to be scrapped, because if it does get scrapped, my rentals will go through the roof. And the rental increase will outweigh any tax benefits that I'm deriving from my portfolio. So that's actually a good thing. The most important thing I'm going to show you is the first home buyers grant was introduced here in 2000, and you can see what happened to the property market. It absolutely boomed, and the market went up by 15, 20, 25% in terms of capital growth appreciation for 3 years. So we had a massive Melbourne boom in here. This is obviously the median prices for Australia, but this is, in terms of Melbourne, we had 25, 30% growth for 3 years. And then it kind of, went sideways for a while. Then we had the first home buyers grant boost introduced in 2008 in October. And that was just after the GFC. And then the market boomed again. And then so every time we throw money or incentives at first home buyers, they jump on it. And they're a big sector of the society because there's a lot of ambitious young people with very good jobs, very good income savings, but they just don't qualify for loans. And remember, 90% of loans are rejected by lenders, mortgage insurers, because most people can't afford to spend to save a 20% deposit. That's been a huge barrier in Australia. We had another one, which was obviously introduced later on. This is only up to 2000 and let's say 20. And so that also boosted the market. So every time there is a first home buyers grant introduced, it's going to do wonders for the property market. Now, remember, the deposit scheme is going to have extensive media coverage on radio, on TV. Already it's on, Today, Tonight, breakfast shows, Four Corners, everything. So it's basically a 5% deposit. There's unlimited places, which is crazy. So there has no limit. There's no income limit. So if you can have $1 million in your bank account and be a millionaire. If you've never bought your first property, you can have a property in Melbourne up to, I'll show you the limits in a second, 950 with a 5% deposit and no lender's mortgage insurance, no LMI, which is, so every time you borrow above 80%, you have to take out lender's mortgage insurance. And it's an insurance premium. It's the only premium you pay for in your life where it's not actually for you. You're actually insuring the bank's position in case you don't default. See, if you've got a 20% deposit in Australia, the banks are happy to give you, the other 80%, because even if something goes wrong, property doesn't really fluctuate more than 5 or 10%. So they can repossess the property, seize the assets, sell it up, and still pay the agents and legal fees. If you're borrowing 95%, they kind of get very nervous because it doesn't leave a lot of room for repossessing the asset. So that's why they take out lenders' mortgage insurance, which is LMI. And the two biggest underwriters in Australia, GE and QBE, but there's definitely other areas, other banks and financial institutions can underwrite their own risk. So there is a limit, by the way, to, and I'm going to unpack this in a lot of detail because I think it's a very important topic to understand, especially if you're a first home buyer. So in Sydney, it's up to 1.5 million, in Brisbane, 1 million, Canberra, 1 million, Melbourne, 950, Adelaide, 900, and Perth, 850, which is really cool. So that's the first home guarantee of 5%. You've also got the family home guarantee with 2%, and then the regional home guarantee with 5% as well. So the first home buyers grant is an Australian government initiative. I've just grabbed this from different websites. I just want to read you all the jargon because it's important to unpack this correctly. Because I think if it's something that you qualify for, or someone in your family or friends or circle of people that you hang out with can qualify for, I would highly recommend that you send them this video and inform them of what they can do, because this could be a literally once, not in a lifetime, but once in a decade or 2 decade opportunity, which effectively could be in a lifetime, So the First Home Buyers Grant is an Australian government initiative that guarantees part of the loan from participating lenders to eligible home buyers. This allows them to buy a home, with 5% deposit without paying lenders' mortgage insurance. The First Home Buyers Guarantee guarantees up to 15% of the property's value assessed by a participating lender and is not a cash payment or deposit. Eligibility criteria apply, and it's administered by the Housing Australia on behalf of the Australian government. So it's a government scheme, which means it's not going to fail. They have to actually make sure the scheme is implemented correctly. So here's the eligible criteria. To apply for the First Home Buyers Grant, you must be applying as individual or joint applications. You have to be an Australian citizen or citizens or permanent residents at the time you enter the loan. You must be 18, obviously, to get a mortgage, earning up to $125,000 for individuals or $200,000 for joint applicants, as shown on the notice of assessment issued by the Australian Taxation Office. Intending to be owner-occupiers for the purchased property. The key word there is intending to be an owner-occupiers for the purchased property. It means that you need to live in it, but there is no time that is imposed on how long you need to stay in that property. So, it's one of those things where life changes and you have to use your own discretion. First home buyers or previous homeowners who haven't owned or had an interest in real property in Australia includes owning land only in the past 10 years. So first home buyers applying for the First Home Buyers Guarantee need to have between 5 and 20% value of the eligible property saved as a deposit. The minimum deposit required for the First Home Buyers Guarantee is 5%. but participating lender may require a higher percentage depending on the individual financial circumstances. So if you've got very high income, a very good credit file, you probably qualify for the 5%. If there's things happening there, you've got personal loans, HEX debts, maybe you missed a few payments, then you'll be a higher amount. First home buyers should speak to a participating lender to find out whether a deposit is made up of genuine savings for the purpose of their lending criteria with the first home buyer's guarantee. Now, this is why you got to deal with brokers. I recommend that you definitely deal with brokers to get this through, because they'll be aware of all the nuances that every lender has. There's no point you going directly to CBA or some bank and trying to deal with them directly. Why would you? You get a professional to deal on your behalf. They're going to make sure you're getting the maximum benefit and the best possible interest rate. Because remember, the rates will differ from one financial institution to another. Home buyers should confirm with the participating lender whether the cash grant received under the Australian government, state or territory scheme or program can be considered as part of genuine savings. And then you've got to contact, obviously, the right person to deal with. The property types and price caps. So under the first home buyers scheme, home buyers can buy a residential property, including an existing house, townhouse, or apartments, a house or land package, land and separate contract to build a home, so a new house or land estates, and off-the-plan apartment or townhouse. So off-the-plan apartments and townhouses qualify. It's virtually every type of property that exists that you can actually target with this particular scheme. Use the property price cap tool to look up the price caps for each location. So you can actually use, which I'll show you in a second, all the different states will have a different amount depending on their median price. So it's very good in terms of, just to give you an understanding, and this is one of the biggest barriers to get into the property market in Australia is, as the median price keeps going up, and in Melbourne, it's about $1 million for the median price now. There's 4 agencies that report median prices, and it's kind of 870 to 920, but really it's $1 million. If your house is $1 million, you need 13 years of savings to save a 20% deposit. Now with a 5% deposit, it's 3 years. So, it's just going to put a rocket ship up the real estate market, and prices will escalate massively. This is based on an average income of $100,000 on the person saves 15% of their income every year, which is kind of the general consensus of what's possible. I mean, when you consider the amount of taxes that we're paying, $100,000 doesn't leave you a lot of money to live on, because you have to have food, you've got to pay insurance and taxes and everything else. So 15% is actually quite a substantial amount of savings per year compounded. Treasury predicts 70,000 homes will be bought through the scheme in the next 12 months, and claim the scheme will only increase home values by around 0.5% after 6 years. Yeah, right. And they're the experts, obviously, on property prices. I can tell you now, the market is going to boom on the back of this. Developers will increase prices. There'll be competition for very limited stock. It's going to be a complete disaster. So that stock under 950 in Melbourne is just going to skyrocket in value. And obviously, it's always, good intentions, but as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We want to help young people and first home buyers achieve the dream of home ownership sooner. Yes, Albanese, bringing the start date of our 5% deposit scheme forward will do just that. Well done, well done. The Treasury's 0.5% impact in 6 years is ridiculously low. Combined with the Reserve Bank of Australia's rate cuts, the policy is likely to place significant upward pressure on prices. I think the prices are going to go crazy. Not in every sector, but I'll show you where I think the prices will be impacted immediately. But already, if you look at the index since 94, have a look at the loan size and dwelling prices. People pretty much max out their borrowing capacity. As individuals, we pretty much borrow and buy what are the best possible property we can afford to buy. And we, in fact, overstretch as well. We actually buy probably what we shouldn't be buying sometimes, because we think, I'll sacrifice short term just to get into that special property, and that special suburb. So in terms of like what we're doing as human beings, we're kind of irrational when it comes to home ownership in Australia. And this demonstrates this perfectly. So if you can get into a dwelling with a 5% deposit and you've been saving money, the amount of savings already that's in that first home buyer's market, waiting there to get into the property market, they're just going to dive straight in. There's going to be tens of thousands of people in October applying for this scheme immediately when it's available to them, which is cool. And the other thing that's important to understand, it's kind of a perfect storm of what's happening in Australia, because The Albanese house target is nowhere near where it's supposed to be. We're not building anywhere near the 240,000 homes per year we should be building. And there's a number of reasons for that. The biggest reason is that the COVID-19 has created a scenario where the entire industry was locked down for 2 years, and there's been 7,000 bankruptcies and insolvencies in the building and related industries. I mean, a lot of the builders have gone bust. Metricon was on the verge of insolvency. A lot of the biggest builders in Australia have gone insolvent and bankrupt. And when they go down, by the way, they don't just go down independently. They take down all the other businesses, like the subcontractors, the landscaping companies, that are associated with building house or land estates. So we have a situation. We have a massive influx of migration. We have a building industry that's been decimated by COVID-19 and Dan Andrews in Victoria for locking us down no longer. Thanks, Dan. Really, really appreciate that. And there's no recovery in sight. And the government seems almost disinterested. Like they bring these schemes in, but they have no interest in supporting, which is weird in itself, because you would think Labor government will be pro-Labor, pro-laborers. But they're not. They have no interest in supporting or even talking to anything to do with the building industry. It's kind of bizarre, if you ask me, because you would think they'd be fighting for those people because they're the Australian battlers, and they don't care. They don't care at all. It's a kind of a very bizarre relationship. So you can see there, apartments have also been decimated as well. The appetite for apartments and the approvals have completely just gone down to nothing from the peak of 80,000 approvals per year. And there's a number of reasons. Number one is overseas, China, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam has lost its appetite for off-the-plan apartments in Melbourne, Sydney, and the Gold Coast. They've lost money on it. They've got problems in their own countries they're dealing with, especially in China. Evergrande and Country Garden have gone bankrupt, the two biggest builders. The banks are in free fall. There's massive issues in China. There's areas shutting down, unemployment's through the roof. So the last thing people in China are thinking about is putting money into $1 million into a 2-bedroom apartment in Docklands. So because of that, builders and developers like Mirvac, for example, and Central Equity can't get off the plan sales to get the construction finance for apartments. So they can't even pre-sell enough to get the project off the ground. And a lot of projects in Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane have been shelved because the pre-sales are just not there. There's no domestic demand, and the international demand has completely died down. So apartments are on the decline completely. And they're kind of going back to the 90s where, there just wasn't a lot of apartments being built because there was pretty much, a fraction of the population, and people were just kind of happy living in houses and townhouses. So the construction industry has been decimated, and it's one of those things where I'm not sure if there is an answer for it. It could take a decade or two to come back. On the back of this, we have the official cash rate. Obviously, we've had 13 increases, which you can see there, from 22 kind of onwards, and then we had a flat line, and then we're going into a cutting rate cycle. So as we're cutting rates now, affordability becomes easier for people, and they're getting into the market, and they're trying to buy more and more properties, because even for investors, a lot of properties are becoming cash flow neutral or even slightly cash flow positive in major capital cities if you consider negatively gearing them. In terms of residential construction costs, they've escalated completely. And you can see there, the average construction cost for properties has gone up by 30 to 100% in some cases. Now, here you can see there you've got residential output for building houses and others, which is apartments and townhouses. And they've gone up, since 2012, by 142%, 135, and 127. But just talking to builders and developers, and look, I'm doing, and the thing about the developers, they do the same project over and over and over. Like, for example, Corona Homes did a project in Chelsea on the beach side of the highway, and their projects are around 10 years apart. And he told me that the second project, which was started 2 years ago, so they were 8 years apart from completing one to starting the new one, the cost of construction was 100% dearer, and the land was nearly 3 times more expensive. So land's going up, and then also construction and materials are going up on the back of high inflation, but also just because the construction is getting more expensive because the materials from China are becoming more expensive. So what you have is you've got this perfect storm of huge demand, limited supply, but also just creating the product has gone far beyond just inflation, which is tracking around 3%. And so the prices for properties also have escalated. Like if you compare September 2014, which is the blue line, compared to September 24, if you look at the average lot price, median price, from the Housing Industry Association, in Sydney, the average, and this is predominantly for house and land estates, that would be a significant chunk of that sector because there's not a lot of blocks left that are empty inside the established suburbs. But if you look at Sydney, the average block of land was 325, in 2014, and now it's 710,000. In Melbourne, the average block in 2014 was 200,000, and now it's 400,000, 395. Brisbane, 212, 400. Adelaide's 200, 268, which is virtually nothing. Perth, 250 to 350, it's about 100 grand, and Hobart, 125 to 277. It's doubled as well. But look at the increase, in Melbourne and Sydney. I mean, Sydney's just gone through the roof. Virtually, we doubled, but we already started off with a very high price point, which is, interesting. And then companies entering external administrations. I mean, we're talking, thousands in construction, and other industries. So, and this is because of the back of the COVID-19 fallout into the economy. Those 2 years really hurt a lot of businesses. And then after that, when they were coming out of COVID, they were still trading, still trying to run things, and eventually they were collapsing, and they're still collapsing. And this is why the building of detached buildings in Australia has plummeted completely from a peak in 21, 22 down to record low levels, which were in place 10, 15 years ago. And I'm not sure where we're going to get the labor to build all these houses. And the other problem is this, and this is kind of, I'm not going to sound racist here, but there's a lot of people that are coming from different countries where their level, or I want to say this very, very gently because I don't want emails, their level of quality and apprenticeships that they do as a bricklayer, for example, or a tiler or a renderer are very different to the standards we have in Australia. And so, for example, if you're a bricklayer in, I don't know, in Egypt, I mean, if you've seen the walls in Egypt, everything's kind of, there's not a straight wall in town. It's all there's nothing's rendered. And it's all just kind of, you've seen it, right? So, if you've done your apprenticeship in Egypt and you're coming over to Australia, maybe you've got to reskill and learn the Australian way of building walls because it's not going to pass the minimum standards here. So what I'm saying is because we had an exodus of tradies from Melbourne and they kind of went to Queensland during COVID, which I don't blame them because if you're a bricklayer, haven't got a job and you're going to be locked down for 2 years, you're going to go somewhere else where you can actually work. A lot of the foreigners that are coming, they're not really skilled to pick up where the others have left off. So there's a skill gap. Even though they technically have skills, the quality of the workmanship is not the same. I mean, you look at the average house in Afghanistan versus Melbourne, the build quality is very different. Right? Don't send me emails if you're from Afghanistan. All right, I'm just saying, okay? The other thing is happening is that the actual National Housing Supply and Affordability Council forecast 79,000 shortage of houses over a 5-year period. And I think this is just ridiculously low. So if you look at 2023-24, we had a demand of 241,000 homes, and then we had a supply of 155,000. So it's negative 86,000 homes that we should have. So ideally, you want to produce enough house and land estates where there's an equilibrium between, or a matching principle between supply and demand. And therefore, there'll be very little increases in prices because ultimately house and land estates should be affordable. They should be the starting place for a lot of migrants where they come into the country, they get a job, they get a house and land package, they move in, their family can function, they learn the Australian culture, and then they start to work out how the suburbs function and where they want to live, what they want to do, and they work out schools and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's nothing wrong with living in a house on land estate, and a lot of foreigners start off that way because it's convenient, it's large, and it's cheap. But if we're going to create a deficit in the industry, we're going to put a lot of pressure on housing. And already at the moment, we're looking at thousands and thousands of houses behind just the minimum that we need to create each year to meet the demand from the market. So the population change, by the way, also is off the charts. In the most industrialized countries in the world, we're pretty much taking on an increase in as more than anyone else. 45% growth. I mean, it's crazy. I'm a migrant, by the way. So I migrated from Poland in '85. So I must say I'm pro-migration, but I think we should definitely reduce it to the point where it's manageable. Like if you're having a barbecue, guys, on the weekend, right? And you got 20 people coming, do you don't worry about it and just wake up in the morning on Saturday and go, oh shit, we got 20 people coming and we got no food, no plates, nothing set up? Or would you manage and just plan for a couple of days, like on the Thursday and Friday, make sure you have enough alcohol, meat, drinks, maybe set up an area, with a table. Like you would plan ahead, right? You don't just kind of half an hour, oh shit, we got 20 people coming to our house in half an hour, we haven't done anything. Well, that's what the Labor government has done. They've just kind of let all these people in. Oh, you want houses and you want schools and medical facilities? Oh, of course. We forgot that you're human beings and you need that stuff. So what I'm saying is, number one, I'm pro-migration because I'm a migrant. Number two, let's not let in 500,000 people a year, which is not manageable. Let's put it back, not even 250, I would say around 100,000, or as much as we're capable of building infrastructure in outer areas where these areas are actually functional. So these people that come over from different countries can actually enjoy their lifestyle. Because as you've probably seen in my other YouTube videos, I've done a lot of videos on new estates that are completely dysfunctional, where people buy something, they buy a concept or a dream, and there's nothing there. There's no schools, you can't get to the city, there's no cafes, there's no lifestyle centers, and their dream becomes a reality and a nightmare. That's all I'm saying. So if you're a migrant, don't send me emails saying I'm anti-migration. I am a migrant, okay? So please understand. So the other thing is, I guess the growth has been, we're going into the next phase of the property cycle. I'll do another video just on property cycles, but we are at the bottom. We've just turned the corner and we're going into the next growth phase. I think the growth will be substantial on the back of all these things that are occurring in the economy at the same time. And so price appreciation, you can see that we're kind of at the bottom of the market here in 25. It was actually, if you want to get technical, it was kind of February and November 24 and February 25, we kind of had the lowest points in different suburbs in Melbourne, and now it's gone up. So if you're timing the market, you've missed the bottom already. It's already gone up substantially. Some suburbs already have gone up in Melbourne by 12 to 14%. In the last, since January 25. So which over 10%. The market hasn't. The market's still very low because there's a lot of areas that are still stagnating, but there's key suburbs that have done already double-digit growth in Melbourne. So if you're one of these people that want to time the market, you've already missed the bottom of the market in Melbourne. It's going up now. And, long-term since 20, to 25, the market always goes up. You've just got to choose the best type of property you can afford to buy into. And remember, 80% of the growth is the suburb, 20% is the dwelling, okay? 80% is the suburb, 20%, not the other way around, okay? So people buy the brand name of a suburb. They don't buy the dwelling. A two-bedroom Victorian property in Port Melbourne, Albert Park, will outperform a five-bedroom house in Dandenong, because Port Melbourne, Albert Park, Middle Park are brand name suburbs and Dandenong is not, okay? So remember, you're talking about brand name suburbs. That's where the money is. That's where the appreciation is, okay? So you're paying for that. Audemars Piguet, brand name. Casio, not really a brand name. Great watch company, very functional, and I've got Casios and Seikos. I'm a fan, but they don't appreciate in value, where Audemars Piguet goes up in value because it's Audemars Piguet. So you want to make sure you understand the fundamentals of what is behind the growth of suburbs, and you want to be buying brand name suburbs to invest in. Now, you don't need to live there, live wherever you want to live. So what I'm saying is you can live in Dandenong in a 6-bedroom house, but put your money into Port Melbourne. Don't buy another house in Dandenong because you live around the corner, which is the number one mistake that people make. Buy a property within 3 to 4 Ks of where they live because they say they know the market there, and they really don't. It's just all just emotional buying. So the value of the stock is going to increase on the back of all those things that I mentioned before. And the 56% of our GDP now is locked up in real estate. So majority of the wealth in Australia is actually locked up in the real estate market, which is really important. It's actually too big to fail. So it's going to happen with or without you. I just want to make this video to inspire you that we're on the brink of a super cycle in Melbourne, and properties are going to go through the roof. And it's time to act is now before it's too late, before the first home buyers jump in and snap up all the properties on the 950. So which suburbs and price points would benefit the most from the new 5% deposit, no LMI home guarantee? Well, for me, it doesn't matter what you buy when the market's like that, okay? Because you can even buy the worst estates in Melbourne, you're still going to make substantial growth. That's why I always say don't wait to buy property or real estate, buy real estate and wait. But if you want to know what the most undervalued suburbs in Melbourne are, check out this video that I'm going to release on my YouTube channel, which unpacks undervalued suburbs that I believe are going to boom in this super cycle of 25-26. Also, if you want to buy house and land, if you're one of these people that needs a big block with a big house, and I get it, some people just love house and land, then I've also got a video that I've just released, which talks about the worst 10 estates in Melbourne and the best 10 estates in Melbourne to buy into in 2025. So check out the video as well, and they'll give you a lot of guidance about which areas to kind of look at, which areas to explore. It's just my opinion, do your own research, but it definitely opened up your eyes about different areas in Melbourne. And remember, fall in love with the numbers, not the aesthetics of the property. It's all about capital growth, rental yield, depreciation. It's not about the aesthetics of the property. You're never going to live in these properties, so you have to detach yourself, which is the hardest thing to do as investors. And I'm guilty of, having preferences. I live in a particular property that has a particular architectural design. I have a particular preference for certain architectural designs, and I have a dislike for certain architectural designs, but I never let that to creep into my selection methodology. So be fearful when others are greedy, be greedy when others are fearful. So let me ask you this question. What's your next move? What's your game plan for 2025-26? Because things are going to happen, guys. It's time to make some chimichangas now. It's time to get a pre-approval, time to speak to your bank, time to talk to your mortgage broker, time to work out your tax returns. This is the wake-up call, because 2 years from now, everything in Melbourne under $1 million will have gone up by between 100 to 200,000, and you would have wished you could go back to September, October 25, especially before October 25, and bought some properties. This is where, if Bitcoin's 100 grand now, this is Bitcoin at 10,000. You're going to be wishing you can go back, and Bitcoin's going to go to $1 million, by the way, whether people like it or not, because financial institutions like BlackRock are buying it now. So, people are going to wish, I wish I could buy Bitcoin at 100,000. If you're interested in learning more, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you some kind of insight into what's happening. So there's a couple of things you can do. Number one is I'm running a few events in Melbourne this year called the Real Estate Investing Fast Track Weekend in my St Kilda office. These are 2-day events with myself, Stephen McClutchy, and Cameron Fisher from Changing Places Real Estate. They're 2 days where you immerse yourself, and we basically unpack and go through how our clients are buying all these properties. By the way, Stephen McClutchy has a client who's got 116 properties. We've got many clients with 20, 30 properties. We talk about how they structure their portfolios, how they keep buying properties, how they don't max out, because there's a lot of information there that people are not aware of, and that's why virtually all investors max out with 1 or 2 properties. So if you're interested in that, you can just grab tickets. They're $47, and you get a hard copy of my book, Real Estate Made Simple, which is kind of the manual for the event. Now, people have been asking me about my clients, and I'm going to show you some success stories. I'm just doing a book now on my clients and success stories, and which will have a lot of case studies. So this is some of my clients that I've been working with, and I've just been chatting to them recently and asked them, would you mind if I mention you as a testimonial? So these are some of the clients that I've been working with privately and helping them source properties. This is Janet from Melbourne. She purchased 2 investment properties in 3 years. She actually purchased a really good property in Oakley South in the Amara estate for $838,000, and she had it refinanced 12 months later for $1.315 million. So she made $477,000 in 12 months, which is pretty good, nearly $500,000. Then she used that property to buy another property. So this is the property she purchased in Oakley South in Alvina Street. And then, $477,000 equity. And then this is the second property that she purchased and settled in Heidelberg Heights, $895,000. So what we do with our clients, we start off, we sit down, do a strategy session. It's all with me. I work out where you are, where you want to be, and I develop a plan for you of property acquisition. I have access to every suburb in Melbourne, over 480 suburbs. I'm not a developer, I'm not a builder. I can source and sell every suburb in Melbourne, so there's no restrictions, but I'll tell you my opinion about which areas are going to do well and which areas won't. So she's now onto a second property settled, and we're looking at number 3 now. Her goal is to get 8 properties in 10 years and replace her income, which we're going to do. This is another client, Millard from Melbourne. He's purchased 3 properties in 2 years. So he purchased Carnegie in Jersey Parade for $1,225,000. The rent went from $880 to $1,200 rent per week, which is phenomenal. I'm a big fan of Carnegie, great suburb. Then he purchased St Kilda in Elmer Road for $995, which is settling in about a month. That was off the plan. It took about 2 years to build that project. St Kilda is always really good. St Kilda East, it's a no-brainer. That's going to be renting quite well as well. And also he is settling at the same time Anderson Street, Pascoe Vale South, which he purchased off the plan, and that's settling also end of this year. So we started off with Jersey Parade in Carnegie. Buy it, refinance, get the equity, use the deposit to buy 2 more properties. Now we're looking for number 4. So his goal is to buy 10 properties in 10 years, and he'll do that without any problems. This is another client of mine, Charles from Geelong. He purchased 3 investment properties in 2 years. He also bought Carnegie for $1,225,000. And then he purchased one in Chelsea on the beach of the highway for $1,145,000, and then Belfield for $1,175,000. So, once again, it's called the leapfrog effect. You buy one, you refinance, you get the equity, you buy another one. We're targeting small townhouses with very small footprint of land, so you're not paying a land tax, high rental, high capital growth, targeting yuppies, young urban professional couples with no kids. These properties are specifically non-family conducive. Guys, let me tell you something. If you want to have a property destroyed, buy a 5-bedroom house in Pakenham or Berwick and put a family there. We have mum and dad, 4 kids, 2 cats, and 2 dogs. And then you'll see what happens after 12 months. You're going to be repainting every wall. You're going to be redoing everything. So the worst tenants you can have as an investor is families. You're only targeting yuppies, guys, people that are never home. And it's low maintenance, low, townhouses, from duplexes up to 4, 5, 6, 7 in the project, in prime areas, prime suburbs, Richmond, Yarraville, Williamstown, St Kilda, Brunswick, Carlton, all those areas. And this is number 3 in Belfield. So now he's gone off, and he's actually now doing subdivisions, I believe, and other things, and small developments. So a lot of my clients start off with buy and hold, get the team together, and they go off and do different things. So he's got these 12 properties in 10 years, and I'm sure he'll probably get to 20 in 10 years' time because he's doing now developments himself. This is John from Melbourne, purchased 6 investment properties in 10 years. This is in Carrum. This one's in Bond Beach for $500,000. This one is in Mornington, $700,000. This was a 2-bedroom apartment in St Kilda in Martin Street, $635,000. And this is in Queensland as well. So a lot of my clients, just because you're building something in Melbourne doesn't mean you can't go elsewhere and diversify your portfolio. Many of my clients are buying properties in other major capital cities. A lot of my Sydney clients buy 2 or 3 in Melbourne. They already have 2 or 3 in Sydney, and they actually go, some of them have gone to the US and bought properties in Phoenix, Arizona, and other areas as well. So John's goal is to have 10 properties in 15 years. No problem, he'll do that as well. So if you want to be one of those success stories, I encourage you to catch up with me. And look, I'll be honest with you guys, my time is becoming I'm nearly at capacity. I'm literally like 85% at capacity because I'm working majority of my time with my existing clients because they keep coming back for more and more properties, which is the goal. Because the ultimate outcome for most of my clients is to replace their income. You can't do it with 1 or 2 properties. So I've only got a few sessions left this year and next year, and I'm actually thinking of hiring. Sorry about the phone. I'm actually thinking of hiring some buyers advocates and very experienced sourcing specialists that can work with me with my clients because I won't be able to look after clients in the near future. So if you ever want to work with me personally one-on-one, and then once I commit to a client, I'll work with them for the next 10 years. These are the last 12 months, 24 months that I'll be taking clients on myself. So what we do is we sit down, work out where you are financially, work out where you want to be, and then I take an idea and a plan, I develop an action plan for you. And it's all encompassing. And remember, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And many times I see my clients wasting so much time and energy on things that don't work. Where with property, we can sit down, get a good accountant, good financial planner, good lawyer, right down to property management, insurance, and just do the whole thing for you perfectly. So it's an hour strategy session. It's free, no strings attached. There's no payment or anything. I love doing these. This is like my hobby. The minimum you walk away is with the whole team. You get a mortgage broker, an accountant, and the property solicitor. So if you ever need experts in the industry, I'll share my network with you. You get priority access to my developments that I'm sourcing. I'm not a developer, by the way. I'm a real estate agent and buyer's advocate. So I'm not a builder. So you get the whole team. You get the whole strategy that you walk away with, and then you can decide whether it's something you want to get involved with. If it's not, then at least you know what your options are. How do you qualify? Very simple. You got to be at least able to buy a $700,000 property because I don't have anything under 700,000. I think the cheapest properties that I've ever sourced were 695. And so, if you can't borrow 700,000, what I do is probably not for you. Majority of the properties that I source are between kind of 1 million to 1.5 for my clients, which is like a normal townhouse in a normal suburb. So if you're a single borrower, you need to be at least borrowing 700,000. So you kind of got to be on that 95,000 income and have about 100 grand in savings, or now nothing. 5% deposit, even better. Couples as well, 140,000 combined. And if you qualify for a first home buyer's grant, it could be 5%. There's nothing stopping you buying a home as a first home buyer with the intention of down the road later on to turning into an investment property. And I'll help you source those properties, and I'll source them for you. That's all I do. And that way you can live in an area that you can get into very cheaply, and then as time goes by, you can convert it into investment property, move out, and even rent or buy another property. If you're interested, just jump online, send me an email, conrad@investorsprime.com.au, and request a strategy session, or just scan the QR code on the right-hand side just here below me. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I wish you all the best in investing. This is Conrad Bobilek. I'll see you on the inside.